Okay, so at this point, you should have downloaded the files for Chapter 2, CMF Vets Mod 2 start file, and the support file with extra tables. And you can get those either off of Google Classroom attached to this presentation area, or if you're able to log in using the file that I attached in Google Classroom, you could actually access both your documents folder on your College Place High School student folder, and you could actually get to the shared folder with these files on it if you like to do that. So you have a bunch of different options, plus you probably have the class files folder in Google Classroom. You can find these files, I'm sure, and if not, you could email me and let me know. So in Chapter 2, we're talking all about queries, and a query is a slice or a subset out of a larger data table. And again, why is this important? Why are we talking about it? What's the big deal? You're all going into a career field of some sort. Most likely that career field involves data. Not only the organization of data, but the ability to pull out key information for making decisions, solving problems, things like that. And the ability to do that, and that it's really kind of a skill. And actually, I just did a query 3 days ago in Skyward, pulling information out of Skyward using the kind of skills that we're talking about today in running a query. And this has to do with a vet clinic. You probably want, I don't know anything about a vet clinic or veterinarians. Well, you're going to go into a career field, whether it's beautician or diesel mechanic or architecture or whatever, that's going to have its own unique set of data to you. So just going to be thinking about what types of data might be in your career area as we move forward here with this presentation. So let's see, for starters, let's get going here. We're going to spend a lot of time up in this create area. We're going to say create query design. And as I go forward here, just, I may go a little bit fast at times and whatever, but you can always slow me down and stop and go back. So I'm going to create a query based on the table of appointments right here. I can either double click on that table or add. Let's just say I do add the first time here. And it puts it up in my table area, and I'm done with that. I'm going to hit close. I'm going to close out this property sheet for now. I don't really need that over on the right. And for some reason, Microsoft likes to cut things off, so I'm going to use my two-headed arrow here and drag it down so I can see all my field names. And I'm going to add in a bunch of different fields here. And I'm going to drop in the veterinarian field, and I just double click and it drops down into my grid down here. This is kind of like design view in like when you're making a data table like we did in Chapter 1. I'm going to drop in appointment date and appointment time, patient ID, treatment number, and owner. Drop in 6 fields there. Okay, and this is my first ever query that I'm doing here in Chapter 2. We did one of these in Chapter 1. And I'm just looking for a specific veterinarian, the data for a veterinarian. So I'm going to go down here to my criteria row, and let's pretend like I'm looking for a veterinarian, capital G 01, 01, I should say. That's his code. And so I'm going to see all of the appointments related to that veterinarian. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click the Run button up here. Run. And it says, oh, you found veterinarian G01. There's one record. And that's my first query. Great. So I'm going to go up here to my Save button in my Quick Access area because this is a new query. I'm going to hit Save up there. I'm going to call this Q01. Right on. Click OK. And there's my first query. All right. And I'm going to close out that query with my little X over here. Let's go down to this previously existing query called Owner's Query. I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to open it in Design View. And let's go down to Owner's Last Name. And in this case, I'm going to use a wildcard. And all I could remember out of my owners was I was looking for an owner whose name started with K. So I'm going to type in K and then star or asterisk, Shift 8 if you like. And the wildcard is what we typed in there, represents any possible text that follows K. So in this case, I'd be saying, I'm looking for any owner last name that starts with K, and after that comes whatever. A wildcard, anything that starts with K. All right. And I'm going to run that query. I know it gave me 3 records, Kraus, Kramer, and Kaufman. And because I'm going to overwrite an existing query, I'm going to do File, Save As, Save Object As, because this is an object I'm saving, a query, and Save As. I'm going to call this Q02, and OK. And let's close that thing out, that query. And let's go back to our owner's query, and I'm going to right click and open it back up in Design View. And this is called a parameter query. I'm going to extend this out just for laughs here. And a parameter query is where you make a decision kind of on the fly as far as what you want to select. And in this case, just ignore that message. I decide that I want to select by owner state, but I want to kind of do that whenever I want to using a parameter query. And in this case, I have to put my parameter in square brackets. So I'm down in my criteria row. I'm going to say enter state, and I have a left and right square bracket. It must be formatted just like that, or else you'll get something strange. All right, in the middle right, page 2 here. I'm going to go up and run that. And it says, oh, what state are you looking for? So a parameter query is when it's asking you for a parameter or data or what you're selecting on right in the middle of the query. I'm going to type in capital C, capital O for Colorado here and click OK. It says, oh, you're looking for 4 records. All right, great. Let's go and save that. That's an existing query, so I want to save over the top of that. I'm going to call this File, Save As. Again, Save Object As, Save As. And we're going to call this Owner State Query. So I'm going to close that out. And just for demonstration purposes, in the bottom right of page 2, I'm going to just go down and run. I can just double click on that and run that query again. Not that query. Sorry about that. Wrong query. Owner state query. I'm going to double click on that. It goes, oh, what state do you want? Let's say I'm looking for capital U, capital T. Everybody in Utah. And again, the parameter query lets me do this on the fly, so to speak. Click OK, and I've got 4 records. So that'd be really handy if you were wanting to get some data quick, but you weren't sure exactly what you were looking for until you ran your query. All right. We're going to create another query here, create query design. And we're going to open up the treatment cost table, like so, and close. And I'm going to drop in the treatment number, the treatment, the animal type, and the cost, which is all 4 fields. And in this case, I'm looking for a treatment number with a cost equal to 25. I don't even have to say equal. I can just say 25 down there in my criteria row. And I'm going to run that. And I find 3 records that are equal to 25. And I'm going to go up and click on my save icon there in the upper left-hand corner, because this is a new query. Call this Q03. And OK. Close that out. Another new query, create query design. We're going to base this on the appointments table and close. And I'm going to drop in the appointment date, the appointment time, the treatment number, the veterinarian, and the patient ID. And here I'm looking for an appointment that is scheduled for after June 30th, 2021. That's way out there. So I'm going to go down to my criteria. Remember my little hand method of left hand less than and right hand greater than. I'm going to say a middle left page 3, by the way. I'm going to do greater than 6/30/2021. Click off. Notice that it puts pound signs around my date there. And I go to run that. And I've got 2 records. I'm going to save that query in the upper left-hand corner and call that Q04. All right, and I'm going to close that out. Let's do yet another one here. Create query design based on the appointments table. So I'm just going to just double-click and close and drop in appointments into my table area up here. So we're going to drop in the appointment date, the appointment time, the treatment number, the veterinarian, and the owner field this time. All right, 5 fields. And again, for date, I'm going to say greater than 6/30/2021. But this is a compound criteria, which means I'm using more than one criteria. And we did this with advanced filter sort in Chapter 6 in Excel. That's been a while since we did that. So now we're making it so 2 things have to be true. And so first of all, the appointment date has to be greater than 6/30/21, and the veterinarian must be B01. That's like the veterinarian code. So both must be true in order for my query to accept records. I'm going to click Run, and only one record match that criteria. And I'm going to go up here and hit Save and call that Q05. I'm going to drop back down to Design View, so I'm going to just go up here and click on Design View up here. Same deal where I'm using a criteria query, except this time I'm going to make it so it's going to be one thing or the other. So I'm going to run my mouse pointer through that first item there, B01. And I'm going to go to the next row down and type in B01, which means either the record must have an appointment date greater than June 30th, or the veterinarian is equal to B01. One or the other. I'm looking for it to be true. Again, whatever field or whatever career field you're going into will have its own kind of data and own kind of thing it would be selecting on. I've always been into baseball statistics, but here we go. Run, and it selects 5 records. Again, we call that a compound criteria in the bottom left of page 3. And let's see here. I'm going to do a file save as, because this is a new query. Save as, save object as. I'm going to call this Q06. All right. I'm going to close that query. And let's go back and right click on Q06 and open in Design View. And here we have something called clearing a grid. So let's just say I wanted to start all over again and essentially wipe the decks clean. I would bring my mouse pointer from above in front of that first field in my query until it turns into a little down pointing arrow like that. I'll do that again. Drag from above until it turns into a down pointing arrow. Left click and hold and drag over to select all 5 of your fields. And you could just hit delete and it would clear out all of your fields. I'm just going to close that out without saving it. Save no. All right. We're on page 4 already, just rolling right along there with all of our queries today. Importing a table. Now it says something about the instructions about opening support extra tables. Well, if you have that saved to an existing location, you have it saved somewhere on a file folder somewhere where you got this same start file, you don't really need to open it. I could just go to external data and I could go to the import and link area. And this is where, depending on the version, you may have something different. If you're in 2019, it's probably asking you for new data source. I've got 2016 on this machine. I'm going to say access is where I'm getting my data from. It says, oh, where's your file at? Well, let's go find my file. You obviously have your file somewhere else. I've got it in this temporary folder sitting out here. And I have it in, let's see, documents. That's back up here. Documents, temp. Don't worry, I've got it in here somewhere. That was embarrassing. That took me a while to find. I had it in a temporary folder under demo. Again, you might have it somewhere else, saved much better than I did. And I'm pulling this information from the support vets extra tables database. I'm going to double click on that. That's where it's coming from. Importing tables, queries, and forms. Great. Click OK. And I'm going to go out to tables. And I want to get the veterinary vendors table and click OK. I don't want to save the import steps. And there's my veterinary vendors table coming into my existing database. All right. So let's see here. Let's create a new query again. Create query design. This one's going to be based on the treatment table. Treatment cost, I should say. I'm just going to double click and close and drop that in there. And I'm going to select the treatment and the cost. And this time I'm going to sort. This time I'm going to sort ascending by cost. So I'm going to come over here to my sort row and say, let's sort those in ascending order, like so. And run. And here's all of my treatments, and here's all of the costs in numeric order from lowest to highest, ascending order. Right on. Okay. And let's, because that's a new query, let's go ahead and save that as Q07. Let's go and open that up in Design View. Bring your mouse pointer right above treatments to get that solid black arrow there. Left click, select the whole field. I just want to delete that one field, not necessarily clear the grid. I'm going to hit delete key here, and it deletes it. Now I'm left with the cost field. And this time I want to pull up all of the unique costs. And I do this oftentimes with maybe I got a whole list of students and their teachers, and all the teachers are repeated like 5 or 8 or 10 times. Maybe I just want to have a list of all the teachers without any duplicates. So in this case, I'm omitting or getting rid of all the duplicates. I'm going to click on the blank area there, just to the right of my field name, cost, in that blank area. And I'm going to go up to my property sheet. And what I want to do is I want to go to where it says unique values over here. And I want to say, yes, I want unique values. I'm going to close that out and then run it. And this time all my duplicate costs that are all the same are all kind of rolled up into one number. And these are all the individual costs of my various treatment types for my animals. That's kind of interesting. Okay. And that left me with 8 records. I'm going to do a file save as, save object as. And I'm going to call this Q08. And OK. All right. I'm going to close out that query. And it's create yet another query, create query design based on the treatment cost table. And again, slow me down if I'm going too fast. All right, you can do that. I'm going to go treatment number, treatment, animal type, and cost. Those 4. This time I want to do a 2-level sort. We've done this in Excel before in sorting on multiple fields. I want to sort in ascending order on my sort row here. Drop down arrow. I'm going to sort ascending by animal type And the cost area, I'm going to sort ascending by cost. And let's see what happens when I do that. I go ahead and run it. And I've got all 14 of my records. Here's animal type by canine and feline. And within canine, I've got smallest to largest. And within feline, I've got smallest to largest. And it's important that you select the order of the sort, because if cost came before animal type, it would sort on cost first and then by animal type. So the order in your query is very important. All right. So I'm going to click on my save button up here and call this Q. I guess I was calling this Q08. I think I'm going to wipe out my previous query. Oh well, that's fine. And close. All right. And let's move right along here to page 5. Top values query. Go back and open up that query, right click and open it up in design view. I probably closed that out prematurely. What I just did here. I just did this, no lie, I just did this 3 days ago. I was trying to run some information in Skyward, and I was doing what's called data mining, which is the Skyward version of Access. And rather than running every single student and watching it run and run and run and run and run for like 30 seconds, I just wanted to see what the first 5 records would look like. Okay? And so rather than returning all 14 records in this case, I just want to see 5. This is really helpful if you have like thousands and thousands of records and you want to just see a sample of your data. You go up here to return, and in this case I'm going to say I just want to see the first 5 records. I could do this on a percentage. I could return the first 100. I could type a number in here and I want to return the first 15, whatever. In this case I'm going to return the first 5. Then when I go to run that, it just shows me 5 records. File, save as, save object as, save as. We're going to call this Q09. Got to be really careful with these queries, especially when you do your project. Just ask yourself, am I doing a new query? If so, I can just hit the save icon in the upper left-hand corner up here. If I'm writing over the top of an existing query, I do file, save as. Just got to kind of keep thinking about what you're doing. Alrighty, we're creating a new query. Create query design based on the appointments table. Double click. But in this case, I'm actually going to drop in the treatment cost field as well. Double click and close. And I'm going to expand my field name list down here. And this is called a join line. So these 2 fields are talking to each other via the treatment number field. And we call this a relational database where one table is talking to another. One database is talking to another. And in this case, in order for you to be able to link or join tables, these don't necessarily have to be the same field name. It's kind of nice that they are to kind of track them. But they do have to be the same field type, short text, currency, whatever. And if it's a text field, like the same length. So if you're doing a text field, they would have to be both be a length of 10 in order for you to be able to relate one to the other, else it would be a very weird attempt to talk to each other. So we're joining tables here. And from the appointment table, I'm going to drop in the appointment date. And from the treatment cost field, I'm going to drop in the, hold on here a second. I think I just did that backwards. I'm going to go down here and clear this, delete it. Okay, delete. Let's try that again. From the treatment cost field, well, I guess I did have that right. Sorry about that. Appointment date, double click. Sorry, I'm back. And from the treatment cost, I'm doing treatment and animal type and cost. So I end up with 4 fields in my query. All right. And I'm going to sort ascending for both the appointment date, sort ascending, and the treatment field. Again, the order matters. It's going to do appointment date first, and then treatment. All right. And I'm going to go run that. And I've got 5 records. Because I got one situation where the 2 dates are the same. In that case, it's doing alphabetically by treatment. All right. And I'm going to do I can guess this was a new query, so I can click Save up here. I'm going to call this the APPT-TRTM. By the way, for your project, make sure that you spell your queries exactly as your instructions state. One letter, and Sam won't have any idea what you're talking about. All right, so I brought together these 2 tables, treatment and appointments. But what happens if I have treatments that I have no appointments for? Somehow I've lost that data. So I'm going to go back to Design View. And I'm going to right-click on this Join line. Say Join Properties. And from the appointments, I'm using treatment number. From treatment costs, I'm using treatment number. But in this case, I only had 5 records, and I know I had a whole lot more different things in my treatment cost listed there. So I actually, if I want to see all my data, I would want to include all the records from treatment cost and only those records from appointments where the joined fields are equal. I'm going to select item 3 here. This would be like if I had a list of salesmen and their corresponding customers, or let's say clients. But maybe I have a new salesman who hasn't had the time to go out and recruit clients yet. When I join those kind of tables, he would be lost in the shuffle. They would be lost in the shuffle if they didn't have any clients. Maybe I want to have a report that shows all of my salesmen and my clients. So in this case, I would have to change the way the join type is working. So in this case, I selected number 3, click OK. And when I go to run that, I've got 15 records. All right, I'm just going to hit the Save button and save over the top of my previous query and click Close over here. All right. What if I want to create a report from the query? Well, I got this appointment treatment query. I'm going to go up here and say Create Report Wizard. And I'm going to put in all the fields. And next, I'm not going to do any grouping. Next, I'm not going to do any sorting. I'm going to use the tabular layout. I'm going to do portrait orientation. And I'm going to say Finish. Except I shouldn't have done Finish because I wasn't able to name my report. And ordinarily, too, I would probably drag this field. We'll do this in Chapter 3, I believe. We'll edit some reports and manipulate how it's being presented. I've got this big gap here that I probably want to fix later on. I'm going to close this out. And you know what I need to do? Let's go down here. This is probably good practice. I really meant to name that the appointment report. So down here on this object called appointment treatment report, I'm going to right click and rename. I'm kind of going off script here. And I would call this capital APPT, capital REPORT, appointment report, like my instructions asked me to do. All right, that was creating a report from an existing query. All right, and if I wanted to print that out, say my report was open, like it was before, I could go up here and say File, Print Preview. It's kind of like where I just was at, right? And this is exactly what it would look like when I printed it out to the printer. Say I wanted a hard copy for a file or something to put away. We still print out hard copies, by the way, no matter how wonderful technology has become and automated and all that stuff. We still print stuff out. By the way, here's the rest of my report over here. If I slide my scroll bar around to close Print Preview, and I'm going to close this report out here. All right. Let's see here. To create a form for a query, let's say I want to have the appointment treatment query. If for some reason I want to have a form around that, so I'm going to say Create, and I'm going to go over here to Form. And in this case, I could navigate using my records. I could navigate around and look at my various records. I could also open this up in form view if I wanted to. I could click on the last record, I could click on the first record, and I've created this wonderful form for my appointment treatment query. I'm going to close that out, and yeah, I want to save that. Except I'm going to call it the appointment treatment form, and click OK, and pause. All right, so next we're going to do something we did very similar to Microsoft Excel when we did exporting. And I'm going to go and make sure the appointment treatment query is selected in my objects, not open, just selected. I'm going to go to external data, and I want to export to a Excel file. And I think whatever version of Access you're using will look similar to this. And I want to send it to that same folder that I pulled all my files from. It's going to default to that. It's going to export it with the same file name as the Access file name. I want to export the data with formatting and layout. I don't necessarily want to open it when complete. I'm going to click OK here. It says, do you want to save your export steps? And let's say I want to do this several times or do this over and over again. And ordinarily I would put in some sort of a description of this is the process I use to send this file to Excel for analysis. I mean, I'm just making this up. You don't have to type this in. But with all the data out there and all the files that some businesses have, I would want to remind myself what exactly I was saving here. If this was a process I was going to use over and over again, I'd just save my export. All right. And that file out in my folder looks like this. Here's that appointment treatment Excel file I just created. It was not it. You did not see that. That never happened. All right. So there you go with that information there. Okay. And there's my Excel file. All right. Let's go back to Access. And let's see here. That's exporting. I don't need to export the data to a text file at the bottom of page 6. So I'm going to move on to page 7 here. All right. And restricting records in a join, that would be the appointment treatment query again. I'm going to right click and open that in design view. Okay. And here I want to use a query. I'm going to say select all those records where the treatment cost is greater than 10. Okay. And I'm going to run that, again, using my right hand for criteria greater than 10 and run. And I've got 10 records. Okay. And let's see here. Close the query. I'm not going to save that. And I'm not going to save that. All right. Moving on. No changes. Create a query with a field list for the veterinary vendors table. All right. So create query design and veterinary vendors. I'm going to open that up and close. And let's see here. I'm going to drop in the vendor name, the state, the veterinary supply, the quantity, and the cost. And I'm going to click off in this first blank field over here next to cost. I'm going to do a calculation kind of on the fly, a calculated field. And I'm going to right click. We're going to use some of our skills we used in Excel here. I'm going to go to Zoom. And first I want to identify what the new field name is. They also use the term in SAM called an alias, A-L-I-A-S. I'm going to call this total cost, colon space. And I'm going to use a square bracket. I know I don't have to do this, and I'll explain this in a moment. I'm going to drag this just over to the right so I can see my field names. I'm going to put in quantity and write square bracket. Notice that quantity must be spelled exactly like the field name in this data table, veterinary vendors, quantity. Now the square brackets help remind me that it is indeed a field that I'm calculating on. And actually, I don't really need the square brackets around quantity if it is a field name with a single word. But if I was to reference a field name with multiple words, product type, veterinary supply, so on, I would want to put that definitely in square brackets, or I would be creating an error in my calculation. I like to put field names in square brackets just for good form. So I'm going to put this and cost. Notice I've got capitalization, and that field name, and I put a squiggly bracket there, put a square bracket. That field name looks exactly like cost down here. So I have quantity times cost is my new field that's called total cost. And notice that I've separated the field name from the calculation, from the formula, with a colon. And I'm using an asterisk, just like I would use in Excel for multiplication. Click OK, and run. And there is our new field there, new query, I should say. Return to design view. Notice that my total cost field is not formatted, and that doesn't really look that good. So I'm going to go back to design view, and I'm still in that total cost field down there where my insertion point is blinking. Up to property sheet, and let's change the format over here in my property sheet for that field to, yes, currency. All right. Close that property sheet pane. And since I'm in the neighborhood, let's go to the quantity field and do the property sheet. And when I do my query and I extract that data, I want to change what appears at the top for quantity. I want to call this, I'll click in there, call this vendor quantity. And for cost, I'm going to click over here in the cost field. Go up here to my property sheet caption. I'm going to say vendor cost. All right. Now I'm going to close that again there and run my query. And there's vendor, and then I can't quite see quantity, can I? Let's do an auto fit here. Get your mouse pointer between vendor cost and quantity. Double click, and there you go. All right. And let's do a file save as, and let's call this save object as. I'm going to call this query 10. All right, let's close out that query. We are on the home stretch here. Yay. All right. Calculating statistics. Let's do a new query based on the veterinary vendors table and close. Except this time, because I'm doing calculations and statistics, I want to make sure I turn on the total button up here. Click total, and you'll notice a new row appears down here in my grid. All right, and I'm going to select the cost field into my grid, and I'm just going to do a simple calculation. Let's say I want to know the average cost of all of my vendors, or the ones that are supplying all of my veterinary materials and supplies and what have you to run my business. So I'm going to change this from total. Let's say I want to know what the average cost is for my items. So I'm going to come down here and say average for cost. All right. I'm going to run that. Average cost is $10.25. And I might compare that to a previous number. Back to design view. Let's drop in vendor name. So I want to know what the average cost is per item for a specific vendor. And in this case, I'm going to say, for vendor name, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say where. So I'm limiting what kind of vendors I'm going to be calculating on. And criteria, I want to run this on every vendor that starts with RO in my criteria. And again, I want to use my asterisk, my wildcard, to select any records that start with RO and then whatever comes after those. And run. and that's $26. Okay, and let's do a save query up here. We're going to call this Q11, and OK. Return to design view. Clear the grid. So again, I'm going to come above cost here with my mouse pointer, get that black downward arrow, left click and hold and drag over. Hit delete. And I'm going to drop in the vendor name and the cost field, like so. And in this case, I'm going to do cost average. So in this case, for all of my vendors, it's going to calculate an average cost for all of their items for each one of my vendors. So when I go to run that, I've got 4 vendors, and there's the average cost of what I'm buying from them. I'm going to do a file save as, save object as a new query. I'm going to call this Q12 and close that out. And this may be one of the more complex things that we're going to do here, and that is the Crosstab Query, where we're combining 2 fields and kind of overlaying them over the top of each other and then doing a calculation inside them. I'll kind of show you what this means here. We're going to do create and query wizard. I remember doing this back in my cellular days with reports that I would run. Crosstab Query. In this case, I might have had like multiple counties and different tax charges within each county. So I had like a 3-dimensional report where I was totaling amounts within those. So Crosstab Query Wizard. And I'm going to base this off of the veterinary vendors table. And one way to be successful with this is you're probably only going to have 1 field used for your rows and 1 field used for your columns and 1 field used for your calculation. So if you find yourself putting in more fields before going to the next screen, you're probably not doing this correctly. So for starters, I want to select my row headings. I'm going to use the state field. And this is just kind of a mock-up of what my report's going to look like, state 1, state 2, so on, down the left. Click next. Next, I want my columns up here, and my columns are going to consist of vendor name. I went a little bit fast there. Vendor name. So I got my vendor names up here at the top in columns, my states down here in rows. And the next thing is, what am I going to calculate on? Well, I'm going to calculate cost and the sum of costs. So whenever the vendor name overlaps the state, it's going to calculate the total cost for that particular vendor and state. Click next. And I'm going to keep this as the veterinary vendors crosstab and finish. And there are it's like a 3-dimensional report here, because I've got vendor names up here, states down here, totals in here, and the totals of all the totals for the vendors by state over here. So this can be a lot more complex than what we showed here, but it's a very handy report if you want to quickly summarize data. Finally, right now all of my objects are organized by, I'm going to click on the drop-down arrow up here. They're all organized by object type, which is about most of the time is what you're going to use. But some people might want to organize them based on the table that they relate to. So you can click on tables and related views, and there's appointments, and there's treatment cost, and all of the different objects, whether they're tables or queries or reports or forms, that impact those particular tables. But that gets kind of busy, I think, after a while. So I'm just going to select the object type for my option. And now I'm on to page 9. And the last thing I'm going to show you is you can actually go in here to your search and type in AP. So we're looking for all of our objects that start with AP. And there's appointments and appointment form and so on. 4 different objects that I'm searching for. When I'm done searching, I can just clear out that filter, and there you go. All right. So that's the end of the demo. And from here, we will move to the practice exam in SAM, and I will also have a webcast for that to walk you through any questions you may have or struggles you may have with that webcast. Thank you again for listening.